to the first meeting of the Zoning and Planning Committee for the new term. And we are so glad to have you all attending either in person or online. And I want to begin by introducing myself. I'm Lyle Baker, Chair of the Committee, and I'm joined by the Vice Chair, Councilor Wright, also Councilor Albright from Ward 2, Councilor Gordon from Ward 6, Councilor and President Oliver from Ward 1. And if we got any other councilors online or in Councilor Vice President Kalis virtually, and I think that is it, right?
Raina should be here.
Okay. So I thought because we are getting underway in a new term, that it would be helpful at the very outset to have a presentation on our process for doing these things, because we have a new member of the committee. Although Councilor Gordon has followed our work for a while. And we also have new people who are spending time with us in planning, although we have Mr. Lamel here, and we're grateful for that. And we'll talk about those issues. We're also joined, I see, by John Rice from the mayor's office, so we're glad to see him. And Lauren Berman is here virtually as well as Andrew Lee. But I think just it would be useful to, for everybody's concerned, to go around the table and have members of the committee just say a word about themselves and their background, and then we can move from there to the presentation about how we go about our business. So let me start with the president, Councilor Oliver. I think everybody knows who you are, but just for the public who may have some lingering doubt.
Sure. I'm John Oliver, Councilor at Large from Ward 1, currently serving as City Council President as well.
You've been on the council.
Gotcha. So I started with the City Council in 2001.
2001.
Sorry. It sounded odd. Yes, thank you. 2021 by a special election. Happy to be here. This is my second term on zoning and planning. I think that might be pertinent as well.
Thank you very much. Councilor Albright, you're former chair. You want to introduce yourself?
Susan Albright, I'm a former chair. I'm from Ward 2. I've been with the council for 22 years.
So almost 2000.
That's
what I was channeling.
That I got elected. So I said, I don't get 2001. Yeah. I gotta figure that one out.
Me too. I won't try too hard.
I've been on ZAP, I don't remember how many terms, but the other half of my time on the council is on land use. So it's a nice combination to have seen first how our ordinances affect actual land use process.
Super. Councilor Wright.
I'm Councilor Wright from Ward 3 at Large. I was elected in 2020, and I've been on ZAP the whole time.
Don't forget.
I'm my second term as a city councilor, and this is my second term being on zoning and planning. So and I'm at large from Ward 5.
And Vice President Kalis, virtually.
David Kalis, Ward 8 at large, and I've been. This is my 15th year on the council, and I think I've been on zoning and planning for 11 of them. This is my 11th year.
You can't decide between finance and zoning and planning. So,
yeah, that is a tough one.
Ms. Gordon, Councilor Gordon.
I'm Lisa Gordon. I'm at large from Ward 6, and I am new to this and excited to be here.
Thank you. And sorry.
Hi, I'm Councilor Cyrus Dominbin, he, him series pronouns, Ward 4 at large, and like Lisa, I've been a councilor since January 1st.
And I think we're joined by another councilor, Councilor Roach, who's not a member of the committee, but we welcome you, new councilor as well. Do you want to say a word about your background?
Sean Roach. I've been following ZAP as long as Councillor Baker has been on ZAP. Kidding. And then I've joined the council this morning. So
Okay. Thank you. And we're grateful for all of you being here. I'm Lyle Baker, the chair, and I've been on the council. It's my 43rd year in this game. And been on zoning and planning a long time. So we wanted to start with an introduction by the planning and law departments to our process. And I wondered if Mr. Lee, and who's going to sort of take us off and explain this? Who's your lead? Mr. Lamel, do you want to come to the table where you can?
I can.
I'd like you to just be visible on the camera too. The problem is you're visible if you're on the sideline.
I will come.
Can we just go that chair and pull it over here? Mm-hmm. No, one of them.
So I'm going to start the presentation with a kind of just general overview of zoning, what it is, what it isn't, and then I will hand it over to Attorney Lee to talk about specifically process that's relevant to the committee.
And this is all background for the work plan item, which I should read into the record, 2126, discussion of ZAP committee work plan for the new term. And that's so.
Right. And this will be, I think, for what is zoning, this is really meant to be an overview. And since at the end of the month, I will be leaving the city, I give Attorney Lee and other planning staff over to all of you for further questions if this isn't sufficient.
Well, I understand you'll stay with us at least for another committee.
Yes, the end of the month.
Well, we're sorry to see you go, and wish you well, but we'll say more about you later.
Not. Anyways, zoning determines what can and cannot happen on any given property. It regulates the use and development of that property. Newton adopted zoning first in the 1920s, along with many other cities and towns across the country. And it has been amending and revising that zoning ordinance ever since, in some way, shape, or form, sometimes greatly and sometimes very minimally and technically. Zoning, all the municipalities, all the cities and towns within Massachusetts utilize zoning to kind of, again, regulate their land use. It's the State Zoning Act, known as Chapter 48, gives the municipalities that ability, that flexibility. It obviously must be consistent with other rules and regulations. And then there are many things that we'll get into that it can't do, as well as it offers kind of special pathways for certain uses, religious uses, educational uses. In Newton, the zoning ordinance, which is known as Chapter 30 of the city ordinances, breaks down into the ordinance itself, within which, again, kind of lays out those rules and regulations. There's the zoning map, which goes into the various districts and sub-districts, residential, mixed use, business, manufacturing, etc. And then it sets the zoning review process, with which the law department will get a little bit more into. The zoning map shown here. There are a variety of ways you can find the zoning map, and I know when this gets posted, you have links to the assessor's database, the GIS virtual browser, and then through the new Gov system, I know you can look up properties, look up permits, and find the zoning that way as well. So the regulations that are within the zoning ordinance, again, they set out the uses that are allowed and where they are allowed within those districts. You can find that information in the various use tables, which the residential districts, the business districts, they all have their own use tables setting what is permitted. Within those sections as well, within those different districts, you can find dimensional requirements. So it sets the limitations on the lot itself, so setbacks, lot coverage, and it sets the dimensional requirements for the building. It's like height or FAR, floor area ratio, which regulates the mass of the building. And then it gets into various development standards, which are mostly found in Chapter 5 or Article 5. Gets into parking requirements, signage, inclusionary zoning, various things like that. Again, these dimensional requirements, pre my time here in 2015, the city undertook a process not to substantively change the zoning ordinance, but it updated the format of the zoning ordinance and provided a lot of tables, a lot of diagrams, I think, to make it a lot more user friendly. And so you can find these various diagrams. So when you go and you're looking at, I want to do a single family home, or I want to do a mixed use building, or I want to do a manufacturing kind of space facility, you can go find these within the zoning ordinance and get a look at, again, the dimensional controls that are all set out. The how big of a lot do you need? How much building can you put? How much can you cover the lot with building? Open space requirements, setbacks, etc. And then again, related to the building height, floor area ratio, things like that. All of the various uses that are allowed are spelled out. We do have some that are still reserved and aren't defined, but I know over the last bunch of years, we've tried to clean that up a little bit more, make sure the uses are relevant and up to date, and is also flexible to kind of capture the things that the city wants to see and obviously its residents want to utilize. And then I'll just briefly intro the zoning review. So within kind of, if you are looking at to develop or redevelop the property, there are different kind of tiers of review, where the lowest level of review essentially would be something that's allowed by right, where it is administratively approved. You check all the boxes within the zoning. It sets out what you can do. You meet that. You go through the permitting process. You go through inspectional services, ISD, and they would grant you a building permit to build. On the most extreme end of that, there are prohibited uses. And in order to realize that, if you would require a variance through the Zoning Board of Appeals, ZBA, it's a very high bar, very high threshold to meet in order to get a variance. But again, there is a pathway. And then finally, in between, you have these conditional land uses, which are allowed to discretionary review or through the special permit process, which in Newton's case, the city council is the special permit granting authority in 99% of cases. And just quickly, so this again, I think we've been talking about use and form. That is what zoning's bread and butter is. But I know throughout this process, I think throughout the special permit processes as well that go through land use, there are things that come up. And again, zoning does not regulate materiality. It doesn't set that a building should be made of brick or it should be made of hardy plank or shingle or what have you. It can't do those things. It can't regulate the internal configuration of the building. I know there are things within our zoning ordinance, such as kind of lot area per unit, which can control the number of units on a site, but it can't determine, all family size units, all studios, how, it can't do any of that. And then finally, it doesn't regulate ownership structure. I know that's another thing that's come up a lot, but if a private property owner is looking to build and they're doing two-family home, whether it's sold kind of as a two-family home or two separate condos, or if a larger building, they're for rent or for sale, it does not do those things. That is the what is zoning, what is not portion of this. And I'm happy to keep sharing my screen or stop and let Attorney Lee share his, whichever he prefers.
So, Mr. Lee, you want to come in or you want to wait until after Liz's You're welcome having you here, and maybe you should just identify yourself again for people who we know you well, but
Sure. My name is Andrew Lee. I'm an attorney in the city's law department. My preference would be to share my own screen, Zach.
perfect. And I see we've been joined by Councilor Sherrill, I believe, online. Is it virtually? Anybody else?
And Block.
And Councilor Block. Welcome both colleagues.
Is everyone able to see that?
Yes.
Okay. So, as Zach mentioned, I'm going to be covering the zoning amendment process. He did mention also that this is dictated by statute, chapter 48, but then also I'm going to talk about kind of some Newton-centric processes of how the city council works through a zoning amendment. Here's a very brief chart that shows the relevant steps. I'm going to cover each one in further detail, but essentially how a zoning amendment begins. It's not listed here. It is an item is docketed with the city council. Usually the item's docketed from city councils themselves or the administration. Depending on how it's docketed, exactly what it is, there might be some footwork beforehand. The planning department, they look at it, they make some recommendations, but that's not always the case, which is why I started here with what always is the case is once the city council gets a docket item that's a zoning amendment, it gets referred to ZAP. Discussion in committee, public hearing, deliberation. ZAP, like every other committee, reports its recommendation to the full city council, and then the city council takes action. So when the item first gets reported to ZAP, the planning department usually gives background, materials. They usually give a presentation on the item depending on how in-depth it is, because of course the zoning amendment can range from something that's incredibly complicated to some things that are just cleanup items. It's also important to note that the proposal is referred to the Planning and Development Board. So this is a statutory requirement, and you'll see through this presentation that the Planning and Development Board has a role in all zoning amendments. They have to make, or they don't have to, but they have to have the opportunity to make a recommendation to the full city council of whether or not to adopt the proposal. One of the first things that the Zoning and Planning Committee does is they have initial determinations or deliberations and discussions about the docket item. These are critically important because they set the stage for shaping what exactly is going to go into the public hearing notice. Now, the reason that's important is because a public hearing notice, once it's set out, that dictates what can ultimately be approved by the city council, meaning that the scope of that public hearing notice is a limited scope of the action that the city council can take. And that notice has to have a detail of the subject matter of what the proposed amendment is going to be. It's also important to note the timing of this publication. It needs to be published 14 days in advance for 2 consecutive weeks prior to the public hearing itself. And the reason this is so important is under Chapter 48, Section 6. That first date of publication, notwithstanding the fact that the proposed amendment is still proposed, it hadn't been adopted yet. Once it eventually does get approved by the city council and passed as an ordinance, that effective date relates back to the first notice of public hearing, meaning that if a building permit had not been issued prior to that first publication, that whatever process they're going through, the controlling zoning is what is eventually passed, notwithstanding that months have gone by. So because of that, we always make a recommendation of an effective date, unless it's, again, just a cleanup item or something of no real consequence. But the planning department, in conjunction with the law department, will make recommendations of what an appropriate effective date could be. Also, I mentioned that the Planning Development Board has a role through this. They also need to hold a public hearing. So the Zoning and Planning Committee and the separate body of the Planning Development Board have to hold public hearings. Usually, the way that it works here in Newton is they hold them jointly. So you folks will see planning board members at our public hearings, and they at that time are also holding their public hearing. So during the public hearing, the city councilors and the planning board, they get the testimony from the public, what they think about the zoning. And there's no deadline by which the public hearing has to be closed. That's important because sometimes public hearings, they last several meetings. However, once the public meeting is closed, that starts the clock under which the city council needs to act. And that also is true of the Planning and Development Board, because once they close a public hearing, they need to make a recommendation to the city council. And that's this timing piece here. So the city council, with regards to the planning board's recommendation, even if they close a public hearing, that makes the recommendation to the full council, the full council cannot vote on that recommendation until one of two things happen. Number one, they've gotten the Planning and Development Board's recommendation, or 21 days has gone by from the close of the Planning and Development Board's public hearing. Also, once that public hearing is closed, the city council has to vote within 90 days, not the zoning and planning committee. The zoning and planning committee within those 90 days has to make the recommendation to the full council, but the full council themselves have to vote on what's reported out of the zoning and planning committee. It's also important to note what the voting threshold is for zoning amendments. It was Chapter 48 was amended a couple years ago under the MBTA zoning laws. And before, it was straightforward. Every zoning amendment required a supermajority, 2/3 of the full council, 16 out of 24. That's changed for certain types of amendments, which now requires a simple majority of the full council. I've listed here a couple just of the criteria for a zoning amendment to be eligible for a simple majority vote. I'm not going to go into it in detail, but what I will tell you is a process by which the recommendation for what the quantum of vote is gets to the full council. The state guidelines recommends that the Planning and Development Board, as part of the recommendation to the legislative body, also make a recommendation of what the voting threshold is. We follow that guidance. So what we usually do is we have the Planning and Development Board discuss it, the law department or the planning department makes that recommendation to the planning board, and they either adopt it, ask some questions, and then again, it's part of their recommendation to the full council. It is very nuanced, sometimes it's straightforward. So we have to look at each particular proposal to figure out what the quantum of vote is. So once it's voted out of the council, it's treated like any other measure of the city council. 20 days needs to elapse, the mayor needs to approve it. And then once that happens, depending on when the effective date is, it's an ordinance. So I'm just bookending this again with this process, covering each of the steps. And that's the end of my presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. I want to just indicate we've also joined tonight by our new clerk, Miles Starkey, and I'm not sure I introduced you properly last time, but I do want to do it tonight at least. Welcome.
Thank you.
Members of the committee, any questions for just the background? I have one clarification, Mr. Lee. My understanding is that the city council has to act within 90 days or a new public hearing has to be held, right? Yeah.
That's correct. That's a consequence if they don't act in that 90 days. And again, and ZAP needs to hold a new public hearing. And then after that public hearing is closed, again, that 90 days restarts.
Okay. Any questions from members of the committee? Councilor Gibbs.
I don't know, thank you. In the past, we used to have like at the top of the docket item, we would have like the effective day, then we would have all of the states, in our orbit, in the sense of knowing each of these time points, and that seemed to have been dropped. And I don't know if there's any benefit in terms of adding back.
I think for our purposes, let me distinguish between special permits. Once an item is filed, it doesn't require an action within a specific time except under our own rules. In other words, if you docket a zoning amendment it ultimately is going to be reviewed and then sent out for public hearing, but there's no time limit within which that must happen for a zoning amendment. For a special permit, my understanding is it's different, that once the item is filed, I think you have 60 days to hold a public hearing.
65 days.
65. And then the council has to act within 90 days of the close of the public hearing unless an extension is granted. So there's a different statutory framework for special permits.
Okay, I some vaguely remember that I did to see,
We used to, in the old days, we used to have the date of the docketing. I think that if you want to put the date of the docketing back onto these items, the clerk's office can manage that. That's a matter of the president, vice president
Okay.
taking up.
Well, I just sort of remember these stamps, and they would sit at the top of the, public hearing.
There were dates in the memos generally
Yeah,
that the planning
it used to sit
department
in
would
the
put
other
together to
corner.
give us a calendar.
Right, but it used to sit in the other corner, and it was like sort of understanding the timeline.
Yeah, and that's a useful point for the department.
Okay.
This we will, if we haven't got that currently, we can find it. Other questions, Councilor?
Just to call out, what is also new, right, is the 180 days notification. Because this was an amendment to the rules and last term, right, to make sure that within 6 months, every item has to have begun to have been heard. So that part's new.
There's, just let the record show the president's pointing to a parenthesis under the docket item 2126, just so everybody's clear. Anybody else? I think we have covered it. I'm sure there'll be some follow-up questions at some point, but I'm very grateful to you for doing this because I think it's important not only for all of us to be clear, but the public to be as clear as to our process. I just want to thank our predecessors in this committee who started the process of thinking about zoning amendments before we went to public hearing. You could imagine going straight out to public hearing and then having to take it back, redo it, and all of that. So I know that Councilor Albright was instrumental in that change, I think. So, okay. Now the work plan basically is to try and take up items as they come. What we, just for members of the committee's information, I think I've outlined this before, but we tend to meet every week before a ZAP meeting to go over the possible agenda for the upcoming meeting and to look out a few weeks to see what is coming online in our work flow and figure out how to take that up. That's why I'm saying the we, meaning the vice chair and the chair and the planning department and the representative of the law department, as well as the clerk's office, so that we can try and make as much of our work as farsighted as we can. In other words, of seeing what's coming and then deal with it. We don't have many items yet, but I assume some will be docketed and some have been sort of revived from the prior term that are going to come back. For instance, a question of what to do about commercial properties that are developed for solely residential use. Should they be subject to the commercial dimensional controls or residential dimensional controls, and if so, how? That's the kind of thing that was not finished last time, but we hope to bring back to us. And then there are some continuing items like taking a look at how the enforcement of the short-term rental ordinance is going, because that's a continuing inquiry with the Department of Inspectional Services, which reports to this committee. So, so the work plan is going to be evolved, but I just wanted to indicate that that's sort of where we go and how we do it. Anybody have any questions about that? If not, then I would then suggest we to entertain a motion to hold that, because we will come back and talk about the work plan probably more as we go forward. Is there a motion? Councilor Albright moves hold. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you. I'd like now to move to item 2326, which is request for ordinance amendments to change oversight of the Economic Development Commission and for discussion on transition of the city's economic development functions and staff to the mayor's office. Specifically, His Honor the Mayor requesting to amend City Ordinance Section 2295 to remove staffing responsibility for the Economic Development Commission from the Planning Department and relocate the Commission ordinance from Chapter 22 to Chapter 7. And further requesting a discussion of the transition of the city's economic development function staff from the planning department to the mayor's office. So who is going to present this on behalf of the executive? Mr. Rice, are you doing that or is that?
Hi, Chair.
Oh.
I know. I think, if I'm not mistaken, and Andrew, hi, I'm over here on the side. I think Andrew was going to speak to the ordinance, but I can certainly speak to. Okay,
Yeah,
I can.
we have such an able there. I mean, a clerk that manages all the furniture here.
BYOC, I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See, then please introduce yourself for the record.
Hey, my name is Dana Hanson. I am Mayor Laredo's Chief of Staff, and this is my debut with the City Council in any of the committee meetings. I'm looking forward to this discussion tonight. I'm grateful that this was brought forward. As I understand it, that there are the two issues. One is the ordinance, sort of the particulars of the ordinance and how that relates to the Economic Development Commission. But I'm happy to speak on behalf of Mayor Laredo and sort of his general intent on bringing economic development under the auspices of the mayor's office, as opposed to the planning department. Sorry, it's not as opposed to the planning department. It is. We're not looking at this as a taking away from the planning department. It's more we're expanding to be more cross-functional across many departments in the city of Newton. I think that all of us realize that economic development is a vital function here in the city. I think that as I'm not a subject matter expert in economic development, but as the mayor's chief of staff, I've been tasked with supporting our economic development team. And with your permission, in a few minutes, I would love to introduce them as well so they can talk about more of the particulars about their vision. But as city councilors and myself as a everyday Newtonian, driving around the cities, walking through our village centers, I think that we can envision more for economic development and think about ways to improve the viability of businesses in Newton, make City Hall more easily navigated through working across departments. Certainly, the planning department has been a true partner and leader in economic development, and bringing the economic development function with underneath the wing of Mayor Laredo's mayor's office and executive team is really just to elevate and amplify the message that economic development is vitally important in Newton, and that the mayor and the mayor's team are here to support our city's businesses and any initiatives, and really try to work through existing channels and channels that we have not yet fully explored to support economic development in the city. That's sort of like a broad bird's eye view of this, and Andrew eventually will get into the ordinance particulars of the Economic Development Commission. But I'm here just to sort of speak to how we plan on broadening the scope of economic development and really, sort of working towards our shared vision, councilors and the mayor alike, of what we can do to improve business vitality.
Thank you for that introduction. Maybe Mr. Lee, you can explain this change, and my understanding is this is not a zoning ordinance change, so it is not. You don't have to worry about the threshold the same way.
This says not a zoning amendment at all, Councilor Baker. And also, I when we had met earlier, Councilor Baker and Councilor Wright, you thought it would be helpful if I kind of really delineate what city council action is being asked by the administration, because the chief of staff did mention that there's kind of two parts to this docket item, which is correct, right? Is the ordinance amendment itself, but then also the plan with regards to how economic development functions and staff are going to be located and how they're going to move forward under the administration in the mayor's office. So I just want to be very clear that what's before the Zoning and Planning Committee tonight is the ordinance amendment itself. The determination with regards to having the economic development staff and those functions being overseen and supervised by the administration as opposed to the planning department is not a reorganization, so that doesn't require any city council authority. However, because that is changing, and then the ordinance itself about the Economic Development Commission explicitly states that they are staffed by planning department staff themselves, we obviously need to clean that up. And that's why the discussion item is really important. So you understand the why. Why is the ordinance being amended? And of course, the administration's desire to make sure that the city councils are fully apprised of what's happening. So I hope that clears up exactly what it is that the city council is voting on. The ordinance amendments themselves are not very complicated. It only does two things. The first one is it makes it clear that the staff for the Economic Development Commission is not a planning department, someone in the planning department. It's simply staffed by the city's Economic Development Director. The second piece of it is the current Economic Development Commission ordinance is in Chapter 22, the Planning and Planning Department's chapter. So obviously, because it's not going to be staff that is in the planning department directly under their supervision, we're moving it to Chapter 7 boards and commissions. Again, not much more to it, but again, happy to answer any questions.
So do you have reference for us at some point? I mean, on that?
It's in the packet.
Yeah.
It's in the packet. I don't have a slide for it though.
Okay. All right. Questions? Yes. Councilor Albright and then Councilor Getz.
So, Attorney Lee, what's the definition of a reorganization? If taking a section of one department and moving it to another part of administration is not reorganization, then what is reorganization?
Reorganization is something more, meaning that it needs to be changing a core function of a department. It needs to be creating a new department. Simply changing something that is supervision of an existing function isn't a reorganization. So a perfect example is the arts and culture department that's being created. That is a reorganization. It's taking it away from parks and recreation, which again, parks and recreation culture, the culture piece of it is more, it's more of a function of parks and rec than economic development is for planning. And then more importantly, for the arts and culture example is it's creating a whole new department with a new department head.
Their definition is charter, is that where it is about reorganization?
I believe so. And also so I know this for sure because in helping the administration put together the docket items for not just this, but for the arts and culture department and making sure that everything that's moving around met all of the charter requirements. The law department looked very closely at prior reorganizations, what the statuses were, read through various law department memos. So this is all consistent with prior practice and the charter.
Thank you for that.
Okay. Mr. Getz?
Thank you. Attorney Lee, just being comparative with the two languages, in terms of the current versus the new proposed.
Yes.
The one piece that popped out at me was that the new economic development director shall serve as the executive director to the commission. So that's something that's shifting, correct? Because within themselves, within the commission, they, in their agenda for tomorrow night, they're actually nominating their officers. So this piece didn't seem to transfer, right?
In language, you're correct in the sense that that language is no longer going to be their executive director, but in practice, nothing is changing. And the reason that is there really was no executive director role. I don't know who wrote this ordinance in the first place. My guess is that they mirrored the enabling language for the planning board and also the New Community Development Authority that does call for an executive director that has a different specific function. My understanding is the executive director for the Economic Development Commission didn't do anything as an executive director. The commission, they voted their own officers the same way other boards and commissions. The staff, executive director, whatever it is that you want to call it, they didn't do anything as an executive director would. So I think if anything, this is more of a cleanup and codification of practice.
Okay. And then just a follow-up, there's another line that doesn't show up in the new language, such staff to be provided for in the city's budget, in terms of the people that the current people that are being proposed. So it sort of seemed like that was obvious, and it didn't need to transfer. So I was just trying to be, in terms of just understanding comparatively between the two versions, what exactly is changing in the ordinance language.
Right. And again, although the language may be changing, that language was superfluous. Of course, it's the staff that's being provided for in the budget because that's what the economic development director has to be. So really, in terms of substance of the change, there is none.
Okay.
So, Mr. Lee, I know that we have the document, and I probably pointed out and reminded me of we have the not red line in the conventional sense, but we have it's red line in the packet, it's black and white when I read it. So, but it's the deletions and additions. But I think it would be helpful to us to understand what, if anything, you've indicated a couple of changes about the Economic Development Commission itself. Is there any change that you haven't mentioned that we should be aware of?
I don't believe so. Give me a minute. I'm gonna look to see if I can find the red line that would highlight the changes that Councilor Getz just asked about, and see if I can share my screen. But I'm doing this in real time.
But it was hard for me to sort of track what's new.
No, I understand because in the red line that's in the packet, it's simply a relocation of it, and you're asking for the text changes as opposed to just a relocation. Is this right? No, that's not it.
You know anything? Okay.
Section. What do you need?
Two dash.
Let's show
Why
the
do you do it this way?
fuel things.
Let the record show that it pays to show up in person for said fuel. No,
Unfortunately, I
What is-
can't find it. There are no other changes that I'm aware of. Would it be helpful if I can send out and supplement the materials that's provided to the city council with the type of red line that you're asking for? It's not going to show just the relocation. It's going to show the text compared to what is currently there and whatever changes there are. That's going to be very easy to see.
I think that would be helpful just for our colleagues. We always like to know what not just the new text, but what the changes are. So, other questions from members? Councilor Alvarez.
Just run on the legal, is that okay?
Yeah.
So I was doing some research about what people were thinking about moving economic development into the executive branch. And some things that came up were interesting that I didn't see in the letter from Josh Morse. And they were coordination with housing availability and affordability, transportation access, climate resilience, and workforce development, which I thought was kind of interesting. Especially the workforce development where we could work with the schools.
And where's that coming from?
It was some research that I did on just using AI to find out what.
Oh, economic development could be.
Yeah.
Okay, but
yeah.
that's not drawn from anything specific.
No.
I just need to understand.
Probably I could have figured that out, but
yeah.
I didn't go that
Oh,
far.
use AI, yes. All right.
So I would just recommend, I know that that's not part of our purview because we're just looking at the changes in the ordinance, but I thought I would recommend those 4 things for you guys to think about. And I think I love I know Cheryl Lappin and I know Katie Wewell. I don't know Laura Berman yet, but I'm sure I will meet her. And I have every expectation that this would be a successful move.
So maybe it'd be appropriate, if you're agreeable, members of the committee, to hear from the chief of staff and have her introduce our once and former colleague and new colleague, Councilor Guest, before we do.
Yeah, no, the only other piece that I thought, in terms of just the benefit of having the planning department involved, in the sense of just being actually on the Economic Development Commission, because I sort of felt as if that would then sort of give wider context, and I somewhat felt that in listening to a lot of EDC meetings, there's a wide breadth within the current EDC commission, and they're very strong. There's a lot of potential, within that commission. So I just sort of felt as if once this move happens, there's the potential of not having that present during the meetings. And I think that's a pretty critical piece, and it feeds to the topic areas that Council Albright was mentioning.
And I think I do have some, I've talked to the mayor a little bit about this, because I think he's very eager to do this change. But I think that part of the value of having planning involved is that they're available to us in other contexts. So I'd like to hear from the administration how you will preserve what we need without, we'd like this to be additive, not subtractive. Oh, excuse me.
To kind of second Councilor Getz's thoughts, I agree that I think it's really important that planning and economic development happen in conversation and in tandem with each other, and especially given the context of being where we're still down 2 leaders of our planning department, soon to be down a third. I think that I'd like to have a good sense of how that synergy is going to continue to happen, and making sure whether it's they're on the commission or understanding how that is going to work going forward, including in the context of hiring for the planning department.
Anybody else in the committee? Not on the committee? All right. Would you like to respond and introduce your colleague?
If I may, thank you. Thank you, Chair Baker. A lot of thoughts here. One is certainly when the Economic Development Commission, and I have to admit I'm sort of returning to City Hall, but my understanding is that it has been the Economic Development Director who has been the staff of that commission all along. So the staffing is not changing. In fact, we're having a second economic development full-time employee. So we're adding horsepower to that function of staffing the Economic Development Commission. I would say, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the planning department, however, just as any board or commission in the city that needs to draw on expertise or engage in collaboration with any department in the city, we are going to be in lockstep communication. Certainly, if there's something happening either generally under economic development with our staff, and they are liaising with the economic with the planning department, that will be natural. And like literally their cubicles are in the planning department, or like within the planning neighborhood in the ISD office suite. But then on the commission itself, we will certainly have open door invitation collaboration with our planners as well, because as Chair Baker said, this is an additive move. This is not taking like planning away. This is sort of just enriching the cross function. There certainly is nothing having to do with economic development that is not going to be fully engaging with planning. That said, we're also going to be thinking about other departments, such as, Department of Public Works and how that interfaces, sustainability, to Councilor Albright's point on thinking about workforce development. Certainly this can sort of give us a little more breathing room within the economic development function in order to just connect the dots more among the different disciplines that are very important for fostering strong economic development in a municipality. So, who's going to, how we're going to sort of formalize those connections. We're working on it, but I mean, we have department heads meetings. We're going to be having cluster meetings with Josh Morse and John Rice. Like we're working sort of all fronts together in a variety of different functions in City Hall. And economic development is really something that Mayor Laredo heard about a lot during his campaign. And as I said, again, just as a layperson, just traveling around Newton, we want to infuse that function with as much energy and expertise as we can from the planning department and all other departments at City Hall.
I'd like to introduce.
Yes, please. I will start with Lauren Berman, who is our Economic Development Director. And she would have been here in person, but she's feeling a little under the weather. So I'm sure we're all happy that she is taking the Zoom from home. So Chair Baker, may Lauren begin?
Sure. Ms. Berman, welcome. We're sorry you're feeling a little under the weather, but we're
Hey, I'm feeling good enough. I'm happy to be here, thrilled to be stepping into this new role and to be part of the city's economic development team, working to make Newton a vibrant business environment. I'd like to tell you a little bit about me, and then we'll go into our economic development's priorities. So after business school, I worked in marketing and sales for large global corporations, including IBM, Gartner, and Westvaco. But over the past several years, I've worked with considerably smaller businesses and organizations across the city of Newton, ones like Greentail Table, Salt Patisserie, the Newton Theater Company, and Johnny's Luncheonette, as I founded and grew a marketing platform exclusively for Newton's businesses called All Over Newton. And I founded All Over Newton because I felt more could be done to support the city's businesses, especially given the current challenging economic environment. And over the past few years, I've worked with hundreds of businesses in Newton, connecting them with residents, with each other, driving eyeballs, foot traffic, and revenues their way, while doing my best to represent their concerns and interests to the city. So now, stepping into my new role as the city's Director of Economic Development and working alongside Cheryl and collaborating with a bunch of different departments like the new Arts and Culture Department, Planning, Parks and Rec, we will, without a doubt, move the needle on the economic development front. So let me talk briefly about our top priorities, and we have 5 of them. So first, we will support and retain existing businesses because they're the bedrock of Newton's local economy. We want to make sure that existing businesses stay in Newton, prosper in Newton, and they grow here. We'll attract new businesses by positioning Newton as a premier place to do business in Greater Boston. We'll identify target industries and recruit businesses to set up shop here. We are in the process of addressing vacant storefronts, our third priority. Vacant storefronts weaken our village centers and they drain community vitality. We've only been in the job for 7 days and we're already fielding calls about what can be done in West Newton, what can be done in Auburndale, which is where I live, and what can be done in Waban. So we're exploring the mass vacant storefront program and looking at what other communities are doing to address vacancies. We'll work to streamline processes for new and expanding businesses because we want to roll out the welcome mat and make it fast, simple, painless, and maybe even ideally a little fun to do business in Newton. And then last, we'll increase businesses' visibility and encourage foot traffic to village centers, which in part picks up where All Over Newton left off. And we'll do this by partnering with the new Arts and Culture Department, as I had mentioned, Planning, Parks and Rec, and other departments, so we can work as a cohesive unit with aligned objectives. And I'd say we can't wait to get going, but the fact is we've already started. And that's what Cheryl is going to talk about, what we've accomplished over the last week.
All right. I have a question about your goals, but let's hear from a former colleague. Do you want to come up and where we can see you and hear you? Welcome.
I'm happy to be sitting next to you as I did for 18 years.
And I'm happy to have.
Just
identify yourself again for the public who didn't see you until now.
Sorry, Cheryl Lappin. I served on the city council for 18 years, starting in 2002. And my background is in marketing. And I had a consulting business for 30 years, helping small businesses. And most recently, I ran a business for the last 8 years through COVID and through a business model change. So I am really thrilled to be here and to be helping Newton in another way. I'm happy to be working with Lauren, who's amazing. And I just wanted to share a little bit about what we have. I even have music.
This is the coordination with arts and culture. Is that what
So, when Lauren and I got here, we determined that there was no cohesive database of Newton businesses or listings of vacant storefronts. So that was Friday. And then on Monday, we were gifted with 2 wonderful interns from Harvard. And Brianna is right here. She's one of them. And she and Artemis have been incredible. And they have helped us to put together databases. And the first one, the one we're focusing on, is the vacant store database. And so talk about working across departments. We have already worked with Drew Wilson and Jennifer Breslow in the city clerk's office, and they gave us data for business certificates. We worked with Jim Shaughnessy and Alan Cohen in the assessor's office to get that data. Deb Finnemore from ISD for additional health permit information for restaurants, and Doug Greenfield from GIS for mapping, and Greg Unsaldi and Rufin and Rachel Sherman from ISD, not from ISD, from IT, have helped us with access to OpenGov and Zoom and website updates. And we have connected with planning on working together, and our wonderful interns have aggregated all of that information. That there wasn't a cohesive database, and they've done an incredible job. And it's only been a few days, but they've really done an incredible job. And this database will exist on the city's website. So anybody who's looking to relocate here will see where the vacant storefronts are and the information and a wonderful interactive map. Thank you. And so that's what we've been doing. We've also connected with Andrew and Jonah in the legal department to discuss parameters for a future economic development website that we are talking about coordinating with arts and culture, because when you do an event in a village center, it brings business to the villages. So, and we are looking forward to partnering with them. Yeah, we've been collaborating with Meryl Kessler from the Arts and Culture Department. We've met with Greg Reedman and Max Wolf about how best to work with the chamber. We've met with Allison Yee regarding pop-ups, which is another interesting thing you can do. And we have prepared for tomorrow night's EDC meeting, because we now are staffing that. So talk about, there's more, but I don't. We've reached out to our state reps and have spoken to 2 and have meetings with others regarding state programs, including the Mass Vacant Storefront Community program that offers $50,000 in tax credits for participating small businesses. So we've been very busy, and it's just really exciting to be first of all working with the city departments again, and to be elevating economic development in Newton.
Thank you. I should say that I recall sitting next to you when you asked for databases from time to time.
Yes.
Various functions of the city. So this is glad to have you back. Questions from members of the committee? I have one myself. First, Councilor Wright.
So this is from Josh Moore's memo. So you put things in here which didn't really discuss, and I was just wondering how that works in what you're going to be doing. So the core elements of economic development includes, one of the things that's thrown on there is quality of life for employees. So is it for business employees, city employees, or any idea?
I would say employees are, oddly, City Hall employees count as employees in Newton. So internally, externally, employees are stakeholders in this equation of economic development. We want to have synergies in the city, so that way, employers want to bring businesses here. We want to have great transportation and amenities and navigation of City Hall processes. But yes, with respect to that question about, Josh Morris's memo, certainly quality of life for employees is employees of businesses existing and hopefully to come someday soon.
Okay, and I think it would be good, great to have your own webpage, the city webpage.
We are working on that. It's already actually been moved when you go to government, you can drop down. Now we exist there. We're not buried under
Division
of planning. So we already have been elevated and are working on the webpage.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
I should note for the record that we've been joined by Councilor Malachi and Greenberg for this discussion. Other questions? Councilor Elbert and then Councilor Good.
I just wanted to ask you more. What did you think about those four elements that weren't particularly brought out in Josh's letter about housing availability and affordability, transportation access, climate resilience, and workforce development? Do you see those things as things that you'll be addressing?
I think they're really important, and I think it's all tied together. So yes.
Councilor Good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
Thank you. I'm sort of trying to dovetail this with what's happening in EDC now. In terms of with the EDC, they're meeting tomorrow night.
Yeah.
And on their agenda is the discussion of the development strategic plan. And so I just sort of feel as if something is moving a little too quickly, in terms of this reorganization versus getting the EDC to sort of talk about the overall economic development plan. I'd like to have heard from them, and have the full vetting of what their, this recently issued strategic plan is, because it's got a date of December 2025. So this needs to come into what you are tentatively proposing, in the sense of just how this is working and how both groups are working in moving forward. And I at some level, wishing that discussion had happened before this discussion, just so that then I would have the benefit of their perspective and the benefit of this recent plan that was issued. So, you don't need to comment.
We have read the plan. It's an update from the 2019 plan.
Yeah. This was just issued.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And it incorporates a lot of what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
So we have incorporated a lot. We have a few more things on our priority list, but those are all part of it.
Okay.
Yeah, those were, as Cheryl said, our priorities were partly informed by reviewing that plan. So they weren't necessarily, so they are linked together, and we're looking forward to the ED Economic Development Commission meeting tomorrow night so we can discuss it further. We haven't met with them yet.
Okay. Then the only other thought that I was having was, just understanding how economic development in other communities around us are, because I was looking around and I was looking specifically at NADEC, and their sort of organization is a little bit different. So I just wondered, in terms of, and this sort of seems as if it's part of how the executive is organized, and whether or not this is even a bigger question or a bigger, because you're sort of, inferring in terms of the other pieces need to work together, and within the executive, and whether or not economic development needs to actually be in its own freestanding department. But that's a bigger question, and I don't think it's in the purview of what's in front of us right now.
Our narrow question is an ordinance amendment, but it's being informed by all of this. Councilor Gordon, you have a question?
Yeah, I just have a couple of things to think about. I don't expect you necessarily to answer them. I'm very excited about this because just personally for the last 20 years, I've been acting as my own form of the EDC. When I see a storefront vacant, I've been calling businesses and saying, can you come and look and have, see if your business would fit here. For example, a little grocery store in Newton Center, which we're finally getting. So I was just curious, you did talk about having things available for people who are looking to come to Newton. Is this department going to be more proactive in doing more of that kind of, what are we looking for in our village centers that we'd like to see back again?
Yes.
You've been here a long time, so Newton Center had a movie theater, a hardware store, bookstore, grocery store. So there are amenities that I think would be nice to see if we could court those. My other question is, my husband used to work over in West Newton, and we live in Newton Center. And it was onerous we actually had to get another car so that it didn't take him an hour and a half to get from Newton Center by public transportation, because we have little kids and I wanted him home for dinner. There are grants. I work in Acton, and they receive grants for transportation that links up the entire community. So I'm just putting that out there as something maybe to think about. I think it would help our businesses if we had some kind of access between the village centers, in particular Needham Street, where a lot of kids go. And so then we start talking about climate and car trips. So the single use to drop kids off there and just integrate that. The other question I have, so Lauren is the Economic Development Director. Are you the co-director?
The deputy director.
What's that?
The deputy director.
The deputy director, okay. And then lastly, how does it work? You're going to be staffing the EDC. So how do you work out your priorities? So you've got your own office, and then you're also going to be responsible to this group of 15 EDC members. So I'm just curious how that works so that you all are able to figure out your priorities without these two competing interests.
Well, I don't know if Andrew wants to weigh in on this, but I mean, so in the past, the economic development director would show up at the meetings, and the committee would really do the work. And I guess it was kind of advisory. But we're happy to still do that, and I can do more than one thing at a time.
No, I'm sure.
So I think it'll work fine. There are just two of us, and there used to be one of us. So
I have a couple of questions, but I want to make sure members of the committee get this. Anybody else? There are two issues that are not directly related, but I think important because the council will consider this in the longer run. One is we're adding another person. We're looking at a budget coming up soon, which is going to be challenged by health insurance costs by themselves. And then the schools, and we're all concerned about that. And so adding someone as able as you is another position Replacing the director is one thing, but to add a position is something I think we have to take seriously. And the other is the impact on the department. I know we have this wheel here, and I've talked to the mayor. The economic development department was part of planning and could, under emergency conditions, fill in for other things. And part of what I'm concerned about is we're down now, going to be down 2 senior people in the department itself, and we're going to lose the economic development position itself to be filled. It'll be in the mayor's office, and we want to see that role succeed. But I am, as we are the committee charged with the oversight of the planning department and all the work that goes on, and we just heard about what we have to do for zoning, I want to make sure that to the extent we can, we're not going to be even further far behind because we lose these functions to the mayor's office. So there's a fiscal as well as a resource question. The mayor has assured me that his department is going to, his office will stand in if there's a need. And we talked about cross training and service. But I know that, for instance, in the historic commissions, they're short on staff because they haven't gotten minutes done and things like that. And I want to make sure that while we want to see this role succeed, we're not losing ground in the other places. So that's I don't know if there's a comment from the chief of staff to that or the members who are here representing the mayor, but yeah.
May I respond,
Sure.
Chair Baker? Thank you. That's a very obviously budget is top of mind for everyone 24/7 in this city. Please know that the positions are currently being funded through the end of the fiscal year. And in terms of forward thinking, obviously the budget season is coming up. But to your point, in terms of, this is economic development. So the idea is that this is going to be something that over time is going to be adding to the coffers in the city. And, a little bit of, extra oomph on this end, hopefully is going to have some benefits on the other side, in terms of revenue for the city. In terms of sort of bolstering the planning department, we are, a very, collaborative team. In terms of the functions of the historically the economic development director, they were focused on economic development. Certainly, maybe sometimes they would pick up phones in the planning department. I don't know. Okay, Katie's going. But I think that we were, the entire team of City Hall, quite frankly, we do sort of jump in and support one another in every endeavor. But in terms of planning expertise from, I've known the past 3 economic development directors. I'm not sure if any of them had like a specific role in some of the other functions of the planning department, but that's certainly something for us to be thinking about moving forward, and we can talk about that more.
President Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of thoughts or reactions, I guess. There are many of us here on ZAP and throughout City Council who really want to see this succeed. Right? I'm supportive of this. If this is how Mayor Laredo thinks that this is the best way to kind of reinvigorate economic development in Newton, I'm all for it. I am looking forward to the day when we can have that conversation around things like, and I do see it in here, and I heard the words. I think that's great. The streamlining of processes, right, in the city, everything that leads up to a permit and so on and so forth. Not only selfishly because I'm tired of the City Council getting blamed for all of this. It's not entirely our fault. Some of it, granted, might be from time to time, but not all of it. I'm really looking forward to seeing those details. One other thing that I want to see, I had to read the memo from COO Morris twice before I saw it, but it's in there. Let's go out there and compete like crazy. I'm tired of seeing all these large businesses move into adjacent cities and towns when we've got that kind of space here. So I'd love to see the word compete show up a few more times, not only in our documentation, but perhaps in the conversation tomorrow night. I had one other, one thing I do want to just clarify here as well, and I'm assuming I know the answer to this, but assuming it's a really bad idea. We're talking about all commercial here, correct? Not just the small business? I just want to make sure.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. 100%. And in fact, if I may, having just served for a congressional district, I was, in that role. I think one of the reasons why I'm going to be supporting our economic development team is that, we were meeting with, the local consulates. We can think about international, partnerships. We can think about more regional economic development initiatives. I mean, obviously the Charles River Chamber is a great example of an entity that's really thinking about the needs of businesses, not based on just municipal borders and identities, but on a larger basis. But absolutely, small businesses are important, and so are, Dunkin' Donuts and Subway. I mean, these are other important entities. I think that we all have a lot of sentimental feelings and a lot of pride in our very local businesses, and you need a full ecosystem as well. So that's something that we're going to be thinking about, in general. I mean, Trader Joe's, it's not a local business, but oh my gosh, could you imagine if we didn't have 2 Trader Joe's in Newton now?
Well, I'm actually thinking office space type,
Sure.
right?
Larger.
Sure. Yep.
Yep.
Bingo. And one other thing that I believe it was Councilor Kalis who said this somewhere towards the end of last term. A lot of this is a marketing problem, right? I mean, we've got to promote this city. We've got to get our ducks in a row. We've got to get the messages out there. It's all founded on data. Couldn't agree more. With that said, happy to kind of be able to support this, and really looking forward to understanding a little bit more of what's kind of behind what I'm seeing here.
And speaking of Councilor Kalis, his hand is raised, his actual hand.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think my computer is saying you need to go into these meetings because it's not allowing me to raise my hand digitally. So you will be seeing me. But I just wanted to say that I'm very excited about the people that we're bringing on here, and Councilor Oliver just went through it. There is so much to do, and I do remember last year seeing Mr. Sisson just out of his mind with so many things to do: the streamlining, the attracting, the retaining, the competing. There's so much there. One idea that I think has been lost since SETI was mayor is this idea of an incubator and trying to help small businesses, because that can really help us attract as well and retain and grow different businesses. So I'd love you to look into that. And then to Councilor Gordon's question, a challenge would be, Ms. Lappin, you talked about the EDC being advisory, which they always have been, but there's so much brain power there. Can they do more? And always, how do we push them to do more? Because the expertise and the brain power is so vast there that I just think between both of you and them, there's a lot that can be done. So I'm excited to see what happens.
Okay, I want to recognize Councilor Farrell, who's not a member of the committee, but welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
I mean, your background light is yellow and the hand was yellow, so I didn't see it really. But now
it's a difference.
Oh, we got
I too want to join this perfectly appropriate bandwagon to say thank you to Ms. Berman and Ms. Lappin. We're very excited that you're both here. We think that this certainly is at least doubling the power of the Business Development Office. In terms of manpower, one of the things I would like to suggest to the mayor and to you through you is that the business development is critical to growing our financial base. And it may be necessary to take a very hard look. I mean, I don't think there's fat in the Newton budget. I've defended this to residents for a couple of years now, but maybe it's necessary to look at which positions may be significantly more important at the moment than current ones. And I certainly don't want to put anybody out of a job, but the allocation of those resources in order to improve our opportunities, not only to happen to help the local business, local village centers and businesses, but every couple of weeks, I, for one, get and I think some other members do too. And speaking to Council Oliver's point, we get very frustrated to learn, like as we did this past week, that Keurig, Dr. Pepper, is moving to 270,000 square feet of space in Burlington. We just gave up 200,000 square feet of space in Northland that was supposed to be for commercial space. We also just negotiated with Riverside not to encourage them to do more commercial space. These are large developments with lots of room. And I'm not suggesting that your predecessors didn't do this work, but it clearly takes a lot of manpower, person power, to get out there and not only find help for the local businesses, but to go out and really knock on some big doors for the corporations that are looking for space. And it happens, as Councilor Oliver mentioned, regularly in our area, Watertown, and other areas. So I'm very heartened that you are here. I'm also, as I said to you, Councilor Lappin, the other night, very excited that we're going to look at the economic power of culture, arts and culture. I mean, I was so excited the day that we learned that the West Newton Cinema was able to purchase its property back. And what an incentive I think that can be for all of West Newton. I truly mean that. I hope we will continue to look at not only cinema, but other arts forms that might be included in this area. Anyhow, thank you for allowing me to go on, but grabbing some of these larger corporate entities that are moving into nearby towns would do an enormous amount for our budget, not only to meet the current needs, but also to expand the business programs, I hope. Thank you again for letting me speak. I appreciate it, Chancellor. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lee, you wanted to, your hand up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to bring everyone back to the ordinance because I didn't want to leave a potential question of what exactly were the changes. So I did the compare and I made sure it's showing up on red lines. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
So this is exactly what Councilor Getz had put her fingers on. This is it. This is the only red line aside from the relocation and the change in the number because it was relocated. So as you can see, every red line change, I believe, has been discussed. But I just wanted to make sure that I could show the committee what these exact changes are in the format that they were asking for.
So the net of the change is that the director can staff the Economic Development Commission or the designee, which I assume would be the deputy director.
It would be the deputy, and that's exactly the reason for it, because before there was one, now there's two.
Okay, thank you for doing that clarification. It's good to know that. I have a comment, but I want to yield back to my colleagues.
So two things related to the budget issue. I always grew up with the idea sometimes you have to spend money to make money, and I think that's what we're doing here. We're putting forth a little bit more budget, but the rewards could be tremendous in terms of our tax base. So that was one thing to support that issue. And the other one, relates to what Councilor Farrell spoke about with the big companies going somewhere else. I don't think Newton has the best reputation for being an easy place for businesses to operate. And I remember a recent small example of a business that was just trying to change their sign, and it took them 6 months to get their sign changed. So, I mean, and we made this offer to Mr. Sisson. If it's just procedures in Newton that can be changed, that's one thing. But if there's an ordinance change that needs to happen, please come back to us and we will help you move it through.
Oh, we will.
Okay, good.
Yes.
If I could connect a thread between Councilor Albright, Councilor Oliver, and Councilor Farrell's comments, it's just to say that enabling the kind of real estate that might be necessary to attract the kind of big businesses that Councilor Oliver might have been talking about, is the kind of thing that can happen through planning and zoning. And so it just serves to highlight the importance of maintaining that connection and the open dialogue between the two.
So anybody else? So I want to just add a couple of things if I can. Try and share to go last in the conversation. The question about streamlining processes that you mentioned as part of Ms. Berman, part of the we had a conversation in the committee before the term ended from Mr. Sisson about this and with the EDC, and they were doing some homework on these questions. There is a reference, I understand, in the plan to a review of the whole zoning ordinance, which I think is beyond the scope of anybody's capacity. But if there's specific adjustments to the ordinance, I think their committee was willing to certainly entertain those and be clear about it. I do think, though, that part of the process that we're trying to work here is that the city is really a village-oriented community. This is not like downtown Boston, and the villages are an ecosystem of not only businesses but residences and how they all work together. Businesses bring traffic, business activity brings more activity, which is traffic, parking, and all those questions we're trying to solve. We had relieved businesses of some of their parking requirements as part of the last round of ordinance amendments. But I think it's important that as part of this work, that be sensitive to the fact that the value of these businesses primarily, we hope, is going to be to serve the communities that surround them, and that we want to make sure that they serve them well. And it would be, I think, unfortunate to have one part of the city saying, go team, and another part of the city saying no. And we need to have that conversation, I think, in advance rather than after the fact. So I hope in the process of doing that work, you'll be sensitive to the impacts of what is of success, not just the impacts of difficulty, which is part of what we've been hearing about. So we wish you success, but we also want you to be within a framework that makes the city as successful as possible. That's a big principle that doesn't have an application yet, but I think it's important to keep in mind that we are talking about a balance in the community, not just one particular activity to the exclusion of others. So that's my own view. Any other comments? And so the narrow item before us is to move the amendment. President Oliver, you have a comment?
I thought you were going to ask for a motion.
I'm about to do that. Is there a motion to entertain the change recommended by the administration? So moved. So moved. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Abstention? I think that's 8-zip. And Councilor Kalis, we're always glad to have you, virtually or otherwise.
Thank you.
Anyway, I think that concludes our business for the evening, unless anyone has any questions or other comments. If not, I want to say we're grateful to the administration for bringing to us this proposal and these able colleagues to me, or they're already aboard, but in a sense, part of the city community. And again, we're sorry to see you go, Mr. Mel. I mean, we had one more chance at you, so to speak, but it won't seem the same. So anyway, we'll talk more about that next. All right. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn. Thank you, Drew. All right. Welcome, colleague. Thank you. Now, how are you gonna